Hello, I'm Catherine Sines, the president of the Rotary Club of Hudson. Rotary is a professional organization of a group of men and women who support Rotary International. We also join together by a common interest of service to our Hudson community, and we have a sincere desire to give back. We meet weekly on Wednesdays at Laurel Lake Retirement Community, 200 Laurel Lake Drive, in their dining room. We meet from 7:30 to 8:30 and would like to invite you to join us. For more information about Rotary, go to www.rotaryhudson.org. Enjoy the following excerpts from one of our recent meetings and consider joining us on Wednesday morning.
Morning, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Jim Young.
Good morning, Rotarians. Glad to see everybody here this morning. Let us pray. As we gather here today as members of Rotary, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our service to fellow citizens of our community, keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas upon which the future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world. May we be challenged to give our best always, and may we be assured of your presence with us. Amen.
Thank you, Jim. And to lead us in the pledge and the four-way test, Andy Morse.
Good morning, Rotarians. In case you don't know, yes, I am Andy Morse, and it is not a myth. And so I'd like to start with the four-way test now that Rich Warfield finally arrived. So actually, we're going to start with a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. And now the four-way test. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. And to lead us in song, Dick Pearsall.
Today we want to dedicate our song to our speaker. And as you might have guessed, we're going to sing School Days. Okay, here we go. School days, good old-fashioned rule days, reading and writing and arithmetic, taught to the tune of a hickory stick. You were a queen in calico, I was your barefoot bashful boy. When you rode on your sleigh, I loved you, Joe. When we were a couple of kids. Do you, Phil? Oh, really?
Careful with the hickory stick, though. Before I call up Catherine Sines, just want to let everybody know that this evening at 5 o'clock, we have our first gala meeting. It is coming up in May, you know, so it's getting close. So at 5 o'clock at the Baldwin Babcock House, right on the square. Everybody's welcome to attend. The primary thing we'll be doing tonight is getting the committees set up and also starting to look at beneficiaries, because in the next 2 months we will we'll want to come up with our beneficiaries so we can start getting our advertising out. And it's good for all the sponsors and donors to know who the beneficiaries are. So anyone is welcome to attend. It'll be from 5 till 6:30, thereabouts. So we'll see some of you tonight, I know for sure. And now, our president, Catherine Sines.
Good morning, Rotarians. And I promise to try to watch my footing today. I'll try to be good. Next, Chris Barker will introduce our guest.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. Good morning. If you'll please join me and give a nice warm Rotary welcome to the guest. If they would please stand up when I call their name. First, we have Ralph Day joining us. I believe it's his 4th meeting, so hopefully he'll be a member soon. Thank you. And then we have Bill Libby joining us from the Cleveland Rotary Club. Thank you for joining us today. And then we have the guests of Catherine Signs. We have Cheryl Sheetsley and Dave Zuro. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Chris. She always does that so enthusiastically, you know. Really good. Does anyone have any announcements? No one had contacted me. Is there any announcements anyone wants to give? Gee, everybody's tuned in. Great. So we'll go right to our program. That gives more time for our speaker. Dave Basil, would you please introduce our speaker?
Thank you, President Catherine. This month, the theme for the speakers is government. We'll be having all of the candidates for Hudson City Council, and we'll also have a visit from our Congressman, Dave Joyce. But today, it gives me great pleasure to introduce one of our own members to you. Phil Herman came to the Hudson City Schools as Director of Human Resources in 2005. In 2008, he was named Assistant Superintendent while maintaining responsibilities for the Human Resources Office. He was named Superintendent of the Hudson City Schools in 2013. Prior to coming to Hudson, Phil began his educational career in 1996 in Lakewood Local Schools in Central Ohio as a high school English and journalism teacher. And during his years at Lakewood, he became principal of the Jackson Elementary, and later in January of 2003 was named Superintendent of Lakewood Local Schools. Phil is the President-elect of the Akron Area Superintendents Association, serves on the legislative committee of both the Alliance for High Quality Education and the Buckeye Association of School Administrators, and is a member of the National Superintendents Roundtable. Speaking to us today on an important issue for our community is Phil Herman. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Phil. Phil?
Good morning. Dick, thank you for the warm welcome this morning, the song. I appreciate it. I will say that some things have changed in education. We're trying to get away from the hickory stick. No more hickory stick within schools, right? Yeah. There's still some slate around, but we're trying to get away from that. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. This morning I'm going to share with you an overview of the master facility plan. I'm going to talk about why have we been looking into master facility plan, why now, share with you a little bit about the history of the development of the master facility plan, and then get into the primary components of the master facility plan, and certainly, hopefully, leave a little bit of time for your questions. I'm going to move fast. There's a lot to cover here. The facility plan has been in development over years and years, and I'm going to try to cover it in about 20 minutes. So I'm going to be moving pretty quickly. The title of the document, and the document that's coming around on the booklet that's coming around, which is an overview and has been mailed to each of your homes, is called Preparing for Our Future. And that's really the business that we're in Hudson City Schools, preparing our students for their futures. And at this time, and over the recent years, we have been focused on what steps do we need to take to ensure that our facilities are able to meet our students' needs for the long term. So we're preparing for the school district's future and the community's future. Help me out, James. Let me see. Okay. Well, James is working on that. Why we looked at the master facility plan in the first place? We have aging facilities in the Hudson City School District. Our middle school was built in 1927, originally as a high school for the school district, and it has served our community and our students' needs for many, many years to come. At the same time, it is achieving the age, and it is at the point where we need to seriously look at the replacement of the middle school. Our elementaries were built in the 1950s and 60s on North Hayden. They have some significant life yet to give, but they need some attention if they are going to be able to serve students well for years to come. We know that there are rapid developments in instruction and in technology. Education continues to evolve. I was thinking about this last night in our role as educators, and if I were to go to my doctor and the doctor were to approach me with the same methods to fix an ailing knee that they were using in 1927 at the point that the middle school was built, or in the 1950s and 60s when our elementaries were built, I would probably select a different doctor. We need to, we often think about education just fine, that's the way it's been done. And we know that there are rapid developments and changes in education, just like there are in any other entity, in any other industry, and we have to pay close attention to those as well. And when we are replacing aging facilities, we need to make sure that we are understanding what is that too loud? Better? Okay. We need to make sure that we're understanding how education continues to evolve over time, and make sure that we're creating buildings that help us support the best practice in education at the time. It's fiscally responsible to plan deliberately for our facilities and for our future. When school districts wait until there's an emergency, and sometimes school districts do that, they wait until a building is absolutely failing before they put together a plan to replace it. They have fewer options and the plans are more expensive. We have been very deliberate over several years in thinking very carefully and asking for feedback about a plan to meet the students' needs and our community's wants and interests as well. And we have a responsibility to plan for the future. Hudson traditionally has done an excellent job. Leaders that came long before all of us, long before me, long before our current school board, have thought very deliberately about the future of Hudson. Whether it be the high school that was built in 1927, the adoption of an entire main campus between Obiat and North Hayden, or whether it be the high school that continues to serve our needs extremely well today, that was built in the early 1990s. Those leaders planned very responsibly and thought about the future in the next 30 years and the years beyond that. And we're the beneficiaries of that. We have the same obligation to set our next generation up for success. Why now? The point of diminishing returns. I've talked a little bit about the middle school already. We had the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission do and study, in addition to the studies that we have been doing at the middle school, to examine the age of that building, the condition of that building, and they found that the cost to build new, the cost to renovate would exceed 2/3 of what it would cost to build new on a middle school. And when you hit that point at a building, they encourage the community, they can encourage the school district to think about replacing that building as opposed to renovating, because the amount of money that you're putting into that building to renovate it or to upgrade, you won't get out over the long term. Life cycles of existing facilities. If you think of a school building lasting 75 to 90 years, and you think of facilities in thirds, high school, middle grades, and elementary grades, no school district can afford to address all of those thirds at one time. It would be extremely unbearable for a community, or burdensome for a community to try to do any of those thirds at one time. And so, well, we have a comprehensive plan at the look of all of our facilities. The need for replacement is at the middle grades, at the middle school level. The other buildings can be renovated or upgraded to be able to last another 30 years. And as we think about Hudson, again, Hudson traditionally has done just this. 1927, new high school. 50s and 60s, new elementary buildings. 1990, another new high school, and then move the students out and use the old high school as a middle school. And here we are 30 years later now looking to replace that, that middle school. And 25 to 30 years from now, we'll need to seriously consider replacing some of the elementaries on North Hayden. We're in a period of operational stability. It's been 2011 since our last operating levy, and according to Catherine Sines, she will tell you, God willing and the creek don't rise, it will be another 4 to 5 years at least before we need to be looking at an operating levy yet again. And so we try to be extremely cognizant of the tax burden on our community members, and we're in a period now of operational stability within the school district. The plan will take years to implement. I'll share with you the primary details of the plan today. And if we get started next summer, if a bond issue were to pass in November, we get started next summer, we're looking at between 4 and 5 years for total implementation before all components are complete. And lastly, We're in a period of historically low interest rates, and you'll see school districts around us and in the community, or in Northeast Ohio community, as well as throughout the state and even in the nation, looking to try to complete master facility plans and construction plans at this time because the interest rates are so low. So when we're talking about an $81.5 million overall plan, the interest rates that we pay on $81.5 million literally save millions. We talk about it in terms of it being a comprehensive and responsible master facility plan. When I say comprehensive, I'll share with you all the pieces here in a moment, but it's intended to look, and it's been very deliberate to look at all of our facilities within the school district and how are they meeting our students' needs, what needs attention, what doesn't need attention, so that we can prioritize and meet the most pressing needs. When I say responsible, there has been a master facility plan in place. We have had a tremendous amount of community engagement in the development of the plan, but we created the plan over a year ago with 3 different options. And the theme of the whole last year has been listen, 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 modify, and adjust through community focus groups, through meetings such as this with other organizations. And then we adjusted the plan and then came back out again with additional focus groups, additional community engagement meetings with our various committees within the school district and those in the community. And again, it's been over and over and over. Listen, 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 modify, and adjust. And when I talk about it being responsible, the plan is in a much, much different place than it was when it was initially rolled out. And that is our obligation, to listen carefully to the community and to make adjustments to meet the students' needs, but also the community's desires. I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on the process because, in the interest of time, but I do want to demonstrate this goes all the way back to 2010 and 2011, where there were surveys and committees such as the Innovation Think Tank, which began to identify our buildings and the need to upgrade or update some of our buildings as high priorities within the school district. The Facility Committee in 2012, Facility Study Task Force in 2013. The one I want to particularly highlight here is the ALPHA report. The ALPHA report is a capital forecasting system where we worked within a software program to literally go through each of our buildings and identify all physical components and the expected life cycle of those existing components. Every single roof, all windows, all doors, all flooring, all lockers, all fixtures, all boilers, all HVAC units. Every physical component that you can identify within a building. What is the expected life cycle and what is the anticipated cost to replace that over time? It's a capital forecasting tool that we use when thinking long-term and thinking about budgeting moving forward. It also was a tremendous evaluation of all of our physical assets and the age of those and what would need to be replaced. And so those two things worked hand in hand, and it was a valuable process. The other thing is going forward, when we do replace some buildings or renovate components of buildings, we can remove those parts that are replaced out of the capital forecasting system so that we know that we shouldn't anticipate that as a cost going forward. So it helps us with financial planning long term. As far as the steps of the master plan development, we conducted, as I mentioned, a building condition analysis of each building. We conducted an enrollment analysis, multiple enrollment studies in the building in our school district, and what we learned was that our enrollment will increase by approximately 300 students over the next 10 years. That's the anticipated change. That's really slow and manageable growth. We are at about just under 4,700 students now. We had peaked in Hudson City Schools around 2006 at approximately 5,600 students, and the enrollment had been dropping till about 3 years ago, and then it leveled out and is now slowly climbing again. And so in 10 years, we expect to be around 4,900 students, or slightly higher. We had established priorities in terms of asset preservation, meeting student-centered learning opportunities, refreshing our facilities, and then central office function. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then we began master plan options, and then we dug heavily into the community engagement piece. Oh. There's nothing special I need to do with that flag, right? After, if you knock the Rotary flag on the floor, is there anything, are there any, I don't know, throw it over my left shoulder or do something, I don't know, fold it a certain way? I apologize. Fine day, yeah. This is not, is it going? Okay, it's not necessarily clicking so well. On the master plan development, again, I've talked about all these components. One thing I want to talk about here is the 1927 building study. In the initial plan that was proposed over a year ago, we had talked about tearing down the entire middle school, including the 1927 portion. As you might remember, you may have read some about that in the paper. You may have talked with other community members. And the feedback that we received is that there's certainly a very strong interest in preserving the 1927 portion of the building. Not so many people care about the additions off the back of that building, but the 1927 portion, there's certainly an emotional tie within the school district. And so we took a step back and asked an architectural firm, Westlake Reed Laskowski, to come in and do an analysis of that building. Overall, could the building even be preserved for the long term? Could it be repurposed? And we asked them to look at several different scenarios. They were not proposing any scenario, but they were looking at the feasibility of repurposing that building. So they came back with, if that building were to be repurposed for offices, how much would that cost? If it were to be repurposed as residential, what are the options and how much would that cost? If it were to be repurposed as a community center where a gym would be placed back in that section and the auditorium is maintained and some classrooms and offices all together, how much would that cost? And every one of those options came back within about $500,000 of one another, approximately $12 million in total cost to renovate or repurpose that building. Now we know that we can't take $12 million out of the master facility plan to repurpose that building. So we shared that information with the Board of Education as we move forward with this master facility plan. Over the time of building a new middle school and renovating the other buildings, we will also be running a parallel track with that building where we will be seeking interested developers or interested partners for the purposes of repurposing that building. So we'll be asking for that interest and working with those architects who specialized in older building repurposing. They certainly believe that there, in this community, at that location, there could be a strong interest in a developer wanting to repurpose that facility. So we went through the spring. We looked at those 1927 building options that I talked about. We again engaged the community in May of 2017 with the revisions to the plan. We had meetings with all of our campus neighbors at the beginning of June. And every step of the way, listen, modify and adjust. We adopted the plan in July of 2017, and the board then also passed the resolution to be on the ballot in November. James? Okay, I'm now going to move. How am I on time? I need to pick it up. All right. I'm going to move into the primary plan details. And to me, this is tremendously exciting as I think about the opportunities that this creates for our students, and when I think about where the plan had come from. I want to orient you here to this, to where we are. This is Oviatt Street. This is the north end of Oviatt Street, headed up towards Western Reserve Academy, south, headed down towards 303. Here is Aurora Street. The primary entrances to the existing middle school. Here's the existing middle school, plus the red dotted line here, which is the footprint of the existing middle school. Primary entrances to the existing middle school are off of Franklin Street, into the parking over here, and off of Oviatt Street. That's the way we're arranged today. We paid particular close attention in this. I'll come back and talk about that in a minute. I was going to talk about parking, but I'm going to talk about the middle school first. What is being proposed is 176,500 square foot new facility for the middle school, located there between Mousen Field and Lavelli Field. The initial proposal, if any of you saw those over a year ago, had the building exactly right here backed up against the other one and then sort of wrapping around Mousen Field. And through feedback, we realized we need to take advantage of some of the space that we have and do a better layout. And so what we're talking about is a two-story building with academic wings on the east end. The Media Center here off the back, commons off the back on the first floor, more classrooms upstairs on the second floor through this area, offices on the first floor and the main entrance of the building. Then we move into an area with the auditorium, gymnasiums, gymnasium and auxiliary gymnasium, locker rooms, and performing arts areas with a separate community entrance. We paid particular close attention in this plan to traffic all the way throughout, and you'll see the rest of the campus here shortly. But the idea of separating bus traffic from car traffic is an important one to us. It's a safety issue. And where we can separate bus traffic from car traffic, we try to do that consistently throughout. So parent loading and unloading, a nice wide driveway to allow car stacking and try to get cars off of the streets where they, when they're backing up off of Oviatt Street, able to use the traffic circle and exit back out the same way, while bus traffic can enter in off of Franklin Street or over from the drives on North Hayden. The bus loading and unloading lot is completely separated from car traffic or student traffic. And walkers, and will be dual striped so that it can be used for event parking after hours. The existing parking lot and the existing auto tech garage are eventually returned to green space in this area. The existing Mouseland Field obviously remains the same and in the same location. And then some roads are and driveways are rerouted here a little bit to maximize the existing space, green space, because we're eating up some green space that currently exists in the footprint of the building. As far as the footprint of the 1927 building and the existing middle school, once the students are in the new middle school, and we are done using this as an educational space, we'll talk about that transition plan here shortly, then those additions would be taken down, and this would have a separate entrance off of Elm Street for the parking for the 1927 building for whatever possible repurpose there would be. James? Will you go ahead and play that? So in engaging with the community, when we initially just had a footprint last year of the site, and the community feedback was, we want to know more. Many school districts do not go past a footprint in their initial planning stages, but our community said, if you're going to put a building in that neighborhood, in that location, we want to know more about where it's going to sit and what it's anticipated to look like. And so we took the time over the course of the last winter to slow down again when we were doing the 1927 feasibility study, and to look at the anticipated is that playing there, James? And to look at the anticipated look of the building. GPD did an excellent job of designing the outside and listening to our community's feedback about what they had in terms of interest, not only in terms of the size and layout of the facility, but very importantly, the desire for a traditional looking facility and a traditional architecture, particularly given where that is located. It's a few hundred yards from Western Reserve Academy. There are historic houses in the neighborhood all around it. And so we have desire to have a very traditional looking building on the outside and to be very innovative on the inside. Go ahead, you can play from there, James. This is drone footage to give you an idea of the overall site. So this is on the north side of Mouseland Field, looking south. As we turn to the west here, you can see the existing facility. This is 1927 building here. These are all additions off the back. Looking over towards Western Reserve and towards downtown here, and now we're coming back to the south. You can see Evamere parking lot off in the distance. This is Lavelli Field, Scott Mouseland Field, and we're right over the entrance of Franklin Street here now. And that gives you an idea of the location of the building and the place of the building. Again, very traditional architecture on the outside. And the community feedback was over and over and over, yes, GPD listened very carefully, and the community members that we engaged with were very excited about the overall look and architecture of the building. By the way, the thing that came up is a new elementary concept video. That's not our video. That's on YouTube. So there is no new elementary concept. And I don't know what this is. That James is sharing. Apparently, that's me trying to convince you about the master facility plan. So, yes, also not ours. There we go. We're back. Snow day. We're going to transition now over to, we had been looking at this area of the campus. We're now going to transition over, and I'll talk to you about Eastwoods, McDowell, and Evamere, as well as the traffic flow in this section of the campus. Some of the perceptions that are out there is that this bond issue is really about building a new middle school. That's a primary component. I'd say that's an anchor piece of the master facility plan, but it is not the entire master facility plan. Again, the master facility plan is a comprehensive look at all of our facilities throughout the school district. Okay, Eastwoods and McDowell. Eastwoods currently houses 4th and 5th grade. Under the plan, Eastwoods would receive a 2-story addition to add some classroom space, a 1-story academic addition back in the corner here, and a slight bump out of the kitchen to be able to accommodate 3 grade levels, 3, 4, and 5. Eastwoods was built as a middle school originally, and has large commons and dual gymnasiums, so it's able to accommodate a large number of students while adding a relatively limited amount of academic space. It would look very traditional, or very much like it does today on the outside, but it would be completely renovated on the inside. Again, that's a 1960s building that has some significant life to give, but it needs to be renovated. McDowell currently houses 3rd grade. It would house pre-K and kindergarten. It also would be renovated on the inside. Again, you see the yellow dotted line that runs entirely across the campus. That is a walk and bike path. We paid, again, close attention to try to find safe ways for our students to get in and out of the buildings, and to separate bus traffic from student walking traffic, car traffic from bus traffic. In this particular case, there is a proposed bus loading and unloading lot between McDowell and Eastwoods. The original plan called for there to be an access road that ran along this property line. As you can imagine, when we talked with some of the neighbors on North Hayden Parkway, they had some concerns about a drive running right along their yard. And so that's been revised. There's still some question about this lot and the desire to either move it further in between these buildings and try to put a little more distance between that and the neighbors, as well as buffering along here between that lot and the neighbor's lot. But the idea is to, again, separate our bus traffic, have a dual purpose to serve 2 buildings, a bus lot here, as well as gate that so there's no cut through for traffic to try to avoid traffic on North Hayden, and then to use it as event parking in the after hours. Evamere. Evamere currently houses kindergarten and 1st grade, and is our oldest elementary. Originally, the original portion of it constructed in 1950, and as we were looking at the master facility plan, our original intention was to renovate Evamere, and we had GPD working with us on this plan, the architects, and they came back to us and said, we will renovate Evamere. We can put together a plan if you really want us to, but we think that that money that you would spend at Evamere would be better served in putting additions on Eastwoods and Ellsworth Hill, your newer elementaries that are in better shape to serve more students and eliminate one transition. And so they recommended that we, I apologize, that we take down the oldest sections of Evamere, and that we repurpose Evamere to be our central offices. You might know that our central offices right now are housed in 3 houses on Hudson Aurora Street, over close to the high school. Those houses were purchased in 1989 when the land for the high school was purchased, and the central office staff was moved into into those 3 houses until suitable office space could be found. So that was in 1989. We're still looking for suitable office space for central offices. They are designed as houses. We have offices and master bedrooms. I'm in a living room. I do have a fireplace in my office that doubles as a water feature when it rains. And so it is Certainly, and our central offices house the administrators and the support staff for human resources, pupil services, our business manager, our treasurer's offices, communications superintendent's office, and curriculum. And so, and HCER. Many people don't know that Hudson Community Ed and Rec is under the umbrella of the school board and is also housed in those offices. HCER runs a tremendous amount of children's programming, but also adult programming, but most of the adult programming is done in our schools after hours. We would save a few classrooms and repurpose a few classrooms in Evamere for the purposes of adult programming during the day for HCER. Ellsworth Hill is our newest elementary, built in 2008. The light blue footprint is the existing footprint. And when it was built, the gymnasiums, the number of bathrooms, the size of the utility rooms, and the kitchen were built with a possibility of an addition in mind. So approximately 7 classrooms would be built on, and none of those other things that I just mentioned would have to be added on because they're already, the building can already support that number of students. So it currently houses pre-kindergarten and second grade, and it would house first grade and second grade. So a student's pathway through Hudson City Schools would be pre-kindergarten and kindergarten at McDowell, first and second grade at Ellsworth Hill, 3, 4, and 5 at Eastwoods, 6, 7, 8 at the new middle school, and 9 through 12 at the high school. And again, this is a recommendation to try to maximize our newest facilities already and to try and put more students into those facilities rather than renovating older facilities when we can maximize the newer ones. The high school is in great shape. It's approximately 25 years old. It has many, many, many years left to give to the community, and it holds its own against new high schools that are being built today. But at 25 years old, there are some things where it needs attention. Under the plan, the media center would be renovated, and we would be doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work at the high school. Things like replacing the HVAC units, air conditioning units, the roofing, as well as things like sanitary sewer lines. Not exciting, need for a building that's for that age to maintain it for a long period of time. The natatorium. We have a natatorium within the school district, and there was a tremendous amount of feedback. The natatorium is a priority for our community. There is certainly a desire for a new natatorium in our community. There's not a desire to pay for a new natatorium in the community. And so we are not proposing a new natatorium. We're proposing taking care of and renovating the existing natatorium. When we talk about renovating, the pool itself would stay the exact same size, but it would it also would receive roofing and structure work, increased lighting, increased sound dampening, new filtration systems, new pump room, a larger amount of seating, and renovated locker rooms. The cost of the plan. The new middle school, as I mentioned, is an anchor piece of this facility plan. It's $44 million. All the other components that we talked about, the renovations, the site plan development, high school care, the downsizing of Evamere for central offices, all combined equal $37,550,000 for a total cost of $81,550,000. The plan would be financed for a 30-year bond issue, and it would cost the owner of a $300,000 home approximately $522 a year or $43 a month. A bond issue is like a construction loan for a community. It can't be used for salary or benefits. It's not an operating levy. The permanent improvement levy that was a renewal that was passed in the spring is being used for technology, buses, maintenance of our existing facilities, our ongoing care and maintenance of our buildings. It cannot be, it cannot come close actually to funding a master facility plan. So what's the anticipated timeline? If a bond issue were to pass in November, we would break ground on the new middle school in July of 2018. The anticipated completion would be July of 2020. Then our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders would move into that middle school. Then our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders would move out of McDowell and into the existing middle school for 1 year while those buildings are renovated. So that's called swing space. When you hear about that, those students swing from their existing buildings over into our existing middle school for 1 year. Where else would those students go? How do we complete those renovations, those buildings, without a place for them to go? So they would go into the the existing middle school. During that time, we're running on a parallel track examining developers for the 1927 portion. Once that is completed, the students move back into those renovated buildings. At the same time those buildings were being renovated, the additional Ellsworth Hill was being constructed. And so in the beginning of 2021, or I'm sorry, the 2021-22 school year, all of our students are in the renovated facilities. We would then move on to the central office and make those changes in the 21-22 school year. This is a really important question and a common question. Most of us are thinking, what's in it for me? What does this mean to my home value? What does it mean if I like to use the pool? What does it mean if I want HCR activities? What does it mean where my kids will go to school? What does it mean for my backyard if I live close to the main campus? That's a very, very natural question. I think in Hudson, over generations and generations and generations, our community has asked a more important question, and that's what's in it for us. I feel very fortunate to be leading in a school district where the community has consistently done that for so long and for so many years. And I think that is the more important question than what's in it for me. Of course, we all need to answer that individually, but it's important that we, as a community, we stay focused on what's in it for us. The last slides I have, I'm not going to spend too much time on. They are pictures of other newly built buildings that give you an idea. When we talk about creating student-centered learning spaces, we're talking about some of these concepts. These are not the concepts that are drawn for our particular school. We have not designed the interiors of our school yet. But when we are designing, we are thinking about the fact that we are already educating in our classes today. In our kindergarten classes are the students of the class of 2030. We have them today. What world are they going to be living in? They're going to be living in a world where they're expected to collaborate, where they're expected to come together to solve challenging problems by bringing small, different areas of expertise and working in teams. And we need to model that and create those opportunities within school. We also know that because schools are changing, if we think that the same way we educate students today is going to be the same way in 15 years or 20 years or 30 years, the facility itself has to be flexible, not only for students throughout the beginning of the day to the end of the day, but actually over a long period of time. And so you'll see in schools a lot of flexible furniture that can be moved, is on wheels. You'll see the opportunity for students to go from traditional classroom settings to smaller breakout rooms to wide open spaces where the furniture can be pushed to the side for large-scale projects. And you see that consistently throughout some of these concepts. I'm just going to flip through a few of them. Some of these are concept drawings. Many of them are actual schools. This is Strongsville Middle School that was just opened this past year. That's another view of Strongsville. Strongsville Media Center. That's actually a hallway area outside of classrooms. These are garage doors with whiteboards on them. Traditional entrance here to a classroom. This goes up and opens up into a wide area for project space. The clicker is not helping me here. This is New Albany, an elementary in New Albany schools. Again, the opportunity to move out of classroom space into small breakout sessions. You can see students. This is a completely wide open area, and it's really hallway. It is, you have to go through this area to go from one section to the next section of the building. It's really maximizing the available space for buildings. And we're looking at trying to create those same type of opportunities for our students when we are upgrading or renovating or building new for our buildings. I'm going to go ahead and stop there, and I'll answer your questions now.
Bill, excellent presentation. While you were talking, though, I could not help but think about the triennial property tax evaluations, which came in late summer, and which I think for many Hudson homes are going to increase their taxes, property taxes, by roughly 25% or more. And my question is, is that going to create some significant headwinds against asking the voters also to then add on another $500 or $600 for your bond levy.
Right, so the timing of the triennial update certainly isn't a good one, given that what we are proposing. At the same time, there's a common misperception, George, that because a home value went up 25%, taxes will go up 25%, and they don't. Inside millage goes up 25%. 10 mills would go up at the equivalent rate at which the home value went up. There are also outside mills, and those are mills that are voted on after 1976. And all the mills that are voted on after 1976 are subject to something called House Bill 920. It was an inflationary law put into place in Ohio in 1976. And as millages go up, as property values go up, millages are reduced so that that levy collects the original dollar amount it was intended to collect. And so 10 mills that is split between the school district, the county, and the city, that 10 mills, inside mills, grows proportionately to the value of the home. All the other mills are reduced to collect the same dollar amount that they were collecting before. And so when we look at the total amount of increase, it actually depends on each individual home, whether it goes up. Some have gone up 8%, some have gone up 23%. You're mentioning 25%. It will depend in terms of the exact effect, but Catherine and I calculated a $300,000 home going up 10% in terms of value, and under that scenario, the total tax bill went up 1.4%, exclusive of the bond issue. Then the bond issue would be added on top of that. So it's a common misperception that because of the value of the home went up that much, the taxes will go up the equivalent amount. Just the inside mills do. Catherine, you want to add
And
on?
I hate to correct him, but he's okay if I do. When he said to you the amount that your valuation went up, only the inside millage goes up that same amount, it's 35% of what went up, because it's valuation. You don't get taxed on your valuation, you get taxed on your assessed valuation,
Right.
which is 35% of your value of your home. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to add, again, the 81.5 million, all, I think you know that because you mentioned that, but basically with an increase in value of the houses, we don't collect 1 penny more. And really, if, is that there? Yeah. So really, it sort of depends on the relative valuation. So if your valuation goes up faster than your neighbor, their piece of the pie actually goes down. So if someone's getting a higher percentage, someone else is getting a lower one.
So I know what I just explained is complicated, and I'll be glad to sit down with anyone that wants to look at those tax bills, and I'll show you the effect of that over a period of time and try to calculate it for your home. And Catherine will be glad to do the exact same thing. Yes.
In planning for the future with facilities, HVAC, all that, is there any thought given to year-round school calendar?
We're constantly looking at school calendars. We're certainly desirous to have all of our buildings air conditioned. I would not say that there is a significant movement right now to move necessarily to year-round school. For us to think about, could year-round school happen in the life of these facilities? It absolutely could. I mean, that's the importance of making sure that all the spaces are air conditioned. Yeah.
I have one more question
Yes.
about the finances.
Yes.
How do you communicate the complexity of what you just went through in terms of the millage?
Yeah.
That I think is very important.
So we've been working on that. We've tried to come up with some concise statements, and I was just meeting with someone yesterday to say, can we do a video that is a demonstration with some graphics to help articulate what I just shared with you a moment ago? And the conclusion on that was that we should do a short video with an explanation of, do my taxes go up equivalent to the same rate at which my home valuation went up? And the answer is no. And there's a short video with some short answers. And then I need to say, for those of you who would like a more detailed explanation, check out this video. It is hard to compete for people's attention today. It is a real challenge. The fact that I got this much time with all of you, I greatly appreciate. Typically, when I start to get into that conversation, I get about 30 seconds and eyes gloss over when I start talking about the taxes and the inside millage and the outside millage. But occasionally I'll find some people who really want to understand, and then we're able to have a full dialogue. So it's a challenge, and I think we're going to be doing it through some of the information that we continue to send out to help our community members understand what the overall plan is. But those don't get into the same level of detail that we could in a longer, probably 10-minute or so video explanation.
Yeah, I was just going to throw in a comment. For myself, as well as the other members of the board, we're not out of education. We're all in business and spend our lives in business. And I've worked for large companies and small companies. And I often hear people just have this refrain, oh, gee, schools ought to run more like a business. Well, first of all, they're educating kids. They're not selling widgets. But to that idea, though, if you saw the amount of detail and care that goes into planning of every purchase in the schools, the way it's reviewed and looked over and forecasted, I could say for a lot of the companies I work for and with, that they should run more like at least the Hudson School District does. Because if you look into this, and Catherine is wonderful, she'll give you every detail that you may want to know, but it's really a lot of years of planning went into this. So hopefully people can see that.
Phil, we've been a resident of Hudson for about 50 years, and I really want to congratulate the board and your efforts, and Catherine's and everybody in the district for coming up with a real worthwhile plan. I think congratulations. I have one comment to make. On the Ellsworth Hill, it shows a detention pond going in there. You've got to stop using that detention pond for throwing kids into it. I don't think that's fair anymore.
It's a replacement of the hickory sticks, Mr. Tobin. No, thank you for your comments, and I appreciate your comments. I appreciate. I know that Bill Woldridge had to leave, but Mayor and members of City Council, I appreciate their support. City Council met and reviewed the plan and had a series of questions for me, and then several weeks later passed a resolution in support of the plan and encouraging community to support the plan, which I greatly appreciate that as well. I know that Ron Strobel sits on our finance committee and has been engaged, and you can certainly ask him about the plan as well. He's been engaged in learning about the plan as a member of the school's finance committee as well. And they had to leave this morning, but I'm sure any of them would be glad to answer questions about it and their role in the development of it. Yes?
Can you just give an idea when the move from the Salt Dome over where the buses are going?
So the exact timeline is still being determined. I know that the city is working. The city owns the property where the bus garage is going. We will take possession of the property. So for those of you that don't know, the city is looking at the development of Phase 2 of First and Main. Our bus garage and bus storage area sits in the middle of that. And so we have been working with the city over a series of years to develop an alternative placement and worked through an arrangement in an abatement of the property for the new development where the bus garage would be relocated to the city property and constructed there. City continues to work through environmental issues on that site to get permission from the EPA to build there. I believe that ground could be broken as early as later this fall. If not, then in the spring. We would hope that possibly by the summer of, or by the start of the next school year, we could be in that facility. It may be later next fall before we're able to make the transition. That's the best case scenario. Yeah.
Phil, I think the middle school is open Sunday for tours?
Thank you. You just heard this presentation. I'll be giving this presentation several more times in various community organizations, but the middle school, as Joe pointed out, on Sunday from 1 to 3 is open for tours. If you'd like to come in and see all components of that middle school, including places that you maybe have never been, the boiler room and the space underneath the auditorium and some interesting spots in that facility will be open. I'll be talking some about the plan and have information there. I'm not giving a formal presentation, but we want to make sure that the community has an opportunity to see that building and the conditions of that building. Thank you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
The other, thank you, Phil. That's been a long time coming, that whole plan. It's really been thought out. The other person who's on my financial advisory committee is Kelly Brennan. I wanted to make sure you understood that too. So Kelly is another person who goes over the finances every month. They give me input and go over everything. My 5-year forecast runs by them as well as the board. So if you have questions about the school's finances, he can help answer them also. I'd like to thank our greeters, which was Jim Ahern and Rebecca. Thank you for pitching in. You've really been a good asset to our club. Audio visual setup crew, Dan Rich, Tom Page, Tom Tobin, James Field, and Ron Barnhouse, and Ryan Mattis, did I say it right? Is our new audiovisual person from Service Learning. Make sure you say hi to Ryan. He's here for the month. Are you going to be here all month, Ryan?
What was that?
Are you here all month?
Yes.
Welcome. Thank you. Rotobuck drawing. Did you find one, Phil?
Oh, yeah.
You can't win it, Phil.
He doesn't have a ticket.
I can't win, I can't even see it.
The Rotobuck is $13 and the jackpot is $386.
0509.
0509. Chris, didn't you win last week?
Yeah. Hey, what's going on over that back?
You know. Come over here, please. Remember, the influence of a great teacher can never be erased. Thank you for being here today and have a great week.